I'm Will Lennox from Channel 9, which is a free-to-air broadcaster based nationally in Australia, but specifically I'm based in Sydney. My job is to make sure we can get all vision, audio and ancillary data around the facility. So because we're an IP 2110 facility, a lot of traditional devices still use SDI, so we have to be able to sort of bridge between SDI, 2110 and NDI. So we use the Bird Dog Studios and the Bird Dog Quad 4Ks to make sure that we can get SDI into NDI and vice versa, and that'll all go into our 2110 conversion devices. So to be able to get into software that's NDI based, the Quad 4Ks are definitely the go-to devices for us within the NDI environment. In the city, in North Sydney specifically, you have very specific ratings that are required for anything on the roof. In our tower, our mounting for wind speeds and whether IP67 rated, the Bird Dog A300 met those requirements. We also had a requirement for redundancy, so we have the SDI as well as the NDI out, in which we have a PoE injector that goes into the switch. If we ever lose any of that networking infrastructure, we have the SDI going into a fiber converter, which goes all the way down into the data center, so we can make sure we're always getting that footage if required. That footage is also recorded 24/7, 365 into one of our EVSs. So if anything ever happens, we can make sure we can shuttle through that, and that's available to us. The wide shot of Sydney Harbour is probably the most important for us and for news downstairs. They use that in the backdrop of the 1600 news. It's also used for car accidents on the bridge, any events that happen in the harbour that we can zoom in on. The great zoom that the camera has allows us to get pretty good shots of any accidents or events like that at the Opera House or anywhere along the harbour there. Back to weather, we also look at the sort of rolling storms that can come in from out east in the ocean or from the west over the hills. We get awesome weather shots coming in from that, and they love the time-lapse shots, and they use those in combination with storm footage. They get some pretty cool shots. Being able to access all the devices within the same network and just select source and destinations is one of the main attractions for us. We can push that back onto our producers and our operators in small control rooms and controlled environments, and it just makes it a lot easier.
Well, it is that time again, everybody. Hope you are doing well. My name is Bird Dog John, and I am back in action.
In those scenarios, it's good to neuralize the cameras. You guys know that best.
Very straightforward. Plug it in, go to the web UI, link the source, walk away. You know, like super simple. I keep looking over at the chat, and I keep seeing you are full of it. Tasty, spicy meat snacks. Covered in flavor. I mean, you can't go wrong. So what's going on? We've got a handful of folks here in the chat, and I really appreciate that. What's up, mate? Hey, Warren, how are you? Appreciate it. Hey, Robbie, how's it going, man? You're just talking about you. What's going on, Tom? Ahoy. How is it going? What's going on, Go Web? Good to see you again. Thanks for hanging out with us again today. Appreciate that. I feel like I'm in this video more than anyone but John. It's true, NetApp. You are, I'm going to cut this up and put this in the next intro. What's happening, everybody? Hopefully you are doing well. My name is indeed Bird Dog John. At least that's what I go by around here. Hopefully you're doing well. Thanks for stopping by. And I am just getting underway making sure all my audio inputs and everything are working. It appears to be working, so let's double check over on birddogjohn.tv, also known as YouTube, and make sure that that's coming through. All right, so let me just, yep, it is being, the audio is working over there as well, so good news, everyone. And what I meant is this one.
Good news, everyone!
We are indeed up and operating. Now, I just noticed that my P110 is very blurry. And the way we can change that is if I cut over to that shot, let's see how blurry the shot is right here. We can adjust the, we can adjust the P110 by changing it over to autofocus. Now, it was on autofocus, but it was focusing for some reason on my monitor, which is also dominantly in the shot. So, yeah, there we go. I think that's a lot better, a lot sharper. And these two images amazingly look very balanced for being two very different cameras. This, this camera is a P110. This camera is a P4K. And, yeah, they look really similar. So, really happy with that. We kind of balanced them. So in the past couple of weeks, if you go back and you look at, you watch me balance them without scopes. I balance all my cameras basically without scopes. And then late last week, a week ago today, I did a whole session on how to use scopes on our cameras, which is a feature that's enabled on most of our cameras in NDI 5. And I balanced them all based on scopes, using the vector scope, using the histogram, using RGB Parade. And now they look, I mean, to do it by eyeball is great. That gets you like 80% of the way there. To do it with the scope, I feel like dials you into like 95%. So these two shots that I can cut between look really similar. Now, as contrast to that, the one shot that I have not done in... because it's still on LTS, is the P200, is this shot. And obviously it's a little overexposed in this, and it doesn't have the scopes enabled. So maybe next week I will update to NDI 5 on the P200, and then we can balance that one to the P4K, which is my main shot, which is this one that you're looking at. So as you're going around the room, you can definitely see the different camera angles that I use, and they're all different cameras. I don't have three cameras and a keyboard. I've got every single camera that I have in here is a different camera than the other. So P110, P4K, P110, P200, P100. Now the 100 and the 110 are similar in brains. They're different lenses. P200 is a very well-known, well-loved lens, and is a standard Sony broadcast lens. And then the P4K, which is kind of like the high end of the indoor cameras that we offer right now, that one is first and foremost. That's my main camera. So there you go. So that's kind of a walk around the room. I am going to turn on the playlist just so that we go through here. Oh, one of the things that we did yesterday. So one of our manufacturers had asked if we could provide like a little video showing, like demonstrating kind of a problem that we were having. And I used vMix to record it, but I wanted to do like multiple cameras. And so what we did there was I just recorded in multi-quarter. I don't care for that name, but I recorded in multi-quarter. And to my great surprise, it worked great. So I did multi-quarter. I ended up just using one of the shots, but I was able to record multiple cameras, to an external hard drive essentially. And yeah, that worked wonderful. So really happy with that software solution. It's a similar thing that you would find in something like, like a Blackmagic ISO device, right? Where you can record to a hard drive all the incoming feeds, which is great. That's a better like run and gun solution, because if you're trying to set up a computer every time to do it, but if you have a home base where you're doing, a show in a studio or something like this, and you have multiple cameras and you need to record them all for post, then yeah, there's definitely an option there. So really cool. It worked great. I was surprised how easy it was to set up. I had a little issue at start, but there's a catch in vMix in the multi-quarter option. When you click on record, it says record all NDI sources as native MOVs. You got to uncheck that so that they'll record in the format that you're set up. The other thing that the other thing that I was confused. Well, I've always been kind of confused, but I guess I understand why they have it, but I don't know why it's still like so strongly supported. Is that the first option on the list for recording to hard drive is AVI. Like, that is an ancient video protocol that I guess many people use, but yeah, it's a really long ago was AVI a thing. I prefer more like MP4 or MOV or something along that lines where you're going to get a lot more of the data. It's not going to be it just is a little more compatible with across way more platforms. So when we do record, and I will record today's discussion, by the way, about IPv6, it will be brief. It won't be crazy in depth, but I'll try and give you some history and let you know kind of where we're at in the world with it, and then talk about how we can use it with NDI stuff. So that is the plan today. We will do that shortly. Please find calmer music. This is not an arcade. So we've had lots of discussions about the music on this show. I used to have various music, and now I just I have a long playlist. It goes for like 3 hours or something like that. But yeah, that music is long debated. We've decided that to just kind of go with something. So I'm really sorry if you're not a huge fan of the music. It is a variety of things, but we can. To me, it sounds a lot more like, like the 8-bit Nintendo days, that sort of music. So, anyways, some people like it, some people don't. The thing about music on a stream like this is you're not going to please everybody, and I've already accepted that as a part of my fate. So, there you go. That's there's a free one. A show about my best friend, IPv6. Yes. Balu would understand this concept completely because he probably uses it all the time. And like the description of the video says, IPv6 can get us out of an IPv4 jam pretty easily. And that's what I want to share with you today. I know I've got a knowledge database article on this, but it's good to refresh it and good to kind of get your natural feedback about it as well. I'm liking my new setup, so I want to kind of redo some of the stuff and bring it up to speed. So that's part of the reason for today's show is I just want to talk about it. I want you to know about it and have something to chat about here on the show. So what's going on, Josh? Good morning. I've been using multi-recorder for years, and a chief reason I bought vMix. vMix AVI is great. It uses very little CPU. The codecs is different and very good. Okay, well then I will. I'll check that out. By the way, AVI is just a container, like MOV. Yes, I do know that. It's just. I mean, just because something's old doesn't mean it's not good. I'm just saying, for flexibility and the way that I like to export my files, I find there to be better options in vMix. Stream Beats, yes. So the artist that made all the music for the show can be found if you just go to Google and type in Stream Beats or Streamer Music and then Stream Beats. You'll find all of the music that I use is there. It's royalty free. It's funny because occasionally I'll get flagged for things for music, but they always come back as non-copyright music, and so I never get any strikes or anything like that on my account. Personally, I absolutely love the music. What's going on, Senseless? See, can't please everybody, but you got to make a choice and go with it, and some people will like it and some people won't. So used every single day. This is IPv4. Potentially the music as well, but IPv4, we definitely use it all the time. And if you're unaware of this helpful thing, then it's good stuff. Oh yeah, or you could also search for Harris Heller, and that's the actual artist name. Good times. Great oldies. Well, hopefully you guys are doing well. Thanks for stopping by today. I don't have coffee, and I don't have a snack on stream. I just have water. So this will be interesting. Now, full disclosure, I've already drank all the coffee this morning, so that's already in my system, and this is caffeinated John at this point. So whatever your impression is on that, that's who I am. At 11 o'clock in the morning here in Michigan, caffeine has entered the body at that point. I've considered dropping my caffeine intake or like going cold turkey, but that is one level of commitment I just haven't gotten to yet. So, good morning from LA. What's going on, MTash? Hopefully you're doing well. Thanks for stopping by, as always. Hey, and special thanks to everybody who's gone to birddogjohn.tv and subscribed. The numbers have been steadily going up this week. Over the past 2 weeks, they've been steadily going up, but I've been very impressed that people are subscribing to the show. So thank you very... Whoa! That camera's out of focus. Hey, see... She just doesn't know what to focus on. Now it's focused on the TV, on the screen again. So that's annoying. Anyways, subscriptions 233. We're up again from what I saw last night. So a couple more people have come along for the ride. Okay, let's fix this blurry camera. This is brutal. All right, so I'm going to open up Chrome. Here's how I'm going to do this. I'm going to make this a permanent fix. So I'm going to open up Chrome and go to the P100 site, the web UI, and so that is going to be birddog-studio-p110.local. And okay, so up comes the web UI, and I guess I could share this with you if you'd be so inclined. Let's jump over there. So here's the web UI for that P110, and what would also be helpful, I think, is if you could see the 110. So let's add that to this shot. All right, and I'm going to add this so you can see a little bit blurry. Let's just make this appropriate. Okay, we're just going to need this, so we're going to log in, and one of the things I really wish that this site would do, I did bring this up to the engineers the other day, that it would auto-select that text box since it's the only thing you can do on this site. You shouldn't have to click on it. It should just your cursor should already be on it. But, okay, so here I'm in the web UI. I'm going to change this straight up to manual, and now I'm just going to dial this all the way blurry as far as she'll go, and then I'm going to go all the way back in until I'm close to it. Boom. That's actually pretty good. And I think I like that. So then I'm going to go preset camera, and I'm going to save this shot as preset 1 on full manual, standard. Yep, that's all good. Okay, well, that was easy peasy. Let's take a look at that full screen. Full value, by the way. This is not low bandwidth. Yep, looking good. So there we go. That's how that's done. And it's really easy. I like to save it as preset 1, especially because that camera's not moving around very much. So because it's not moving, I don't need to worry about any of the other preset settings. It's just a single shot. So that's easy. And it's nice and precise. So good stuff. Okay. It's 11:18. And I want to start into the conversation for today. I will start recording this, though, because I like the higher quality. YouTube really compresses the video, and so it looks really bad. So let's do that. Okay, so we're going to talk today about IPv6 and why you should know a little bit about it if you're getting into the NDI world. Now, there are so many people that are broadcast guys or streamers or video guys or audio guys, but now because of NDI, you're getting into the networking realm. And so we should probably have a general understanding as to how this works. We talk almost exclusively about IPv4 and how that works on this on our stuff, but on this show, and how we connect all that stuff into switches and routers and servers and all of that. But IPv6 has been kind of coming up slowly, but because of necessity. So to give some context here, okay, IPv4, which is what you're used to with traditional IP addresses, like when you go to static settings, against my wishes, and you start typing in your static addresses, that's an IPv4 address. It has 4 octets, so it's like 192.168.100.75. Okay, so that is a IPv4 address. And traditionally in the NDI world, we recommend a WAC24 style subnet, and so that's 22255. And then, you need a default gateway. And so at least having those things in place is the first place to start. If you're doing static, you're also going to have to do discovery server, which is also an IPv4 configuration. IPv6, though, in the computing world is coming up quick because, when we were figuring out the structure of the IP ranges, this was like in the 1970s before I was around. And in the 1970s, we were thinking, like with IPv4, with this IP structure, we can have like 50,000 computers in the world. And in the 70s, that was a big number. Okay. We probably have like 50,000 computers in a city at this point. And so having the original structure was that we would have those 4 octets, right? So 192.168.100 dot something. That's an internal network, a link local network, but a LAN, as they say, okay, local area network. That's internal in your office. But what they were thinking was, well, if we want to interconnect all these networks together, what we can do is we can have a router, in Detroit, and that router is going to be, 1 dot something dot something dot something. And then we'd have one in Chicago, and that's 3 dot something dot something dot something. And then one in San Francisco, and that's 12 dot something dot something. And that first octet could go from 1 to 255. Okay, so you'd have this huge range, and you could do it basically by region, and then the next level down, the next octet would be like, okay, that area of town. So in Detroit, if it's 1 dot something dot something something, then like, okay, in Rochester Hills, it's going to be 1 dot 3 dot something dot something, okay? And they were going to break it up that way. And that's how IPv6 was going to kind of roll out and become, be able to interconnect everybody. And in theory, those major hubs that were the hosts, that were the routers for the first octet groups, so Detroit is 1, Chicago is 3, San Francisco, and so on, they all have their own, and again, this is purely just, North America as an example. The routers there would have the master tables, but they would really only need to host the master tables for the routers of the major octets, so like 1 through 255. So they'd only have to know 255 addresses. And they could get the packet that was going from my computer on the 1 dot something network over to the 12 dot something network in San Francisco, and it would just need to go up the chain to the main router. The main router would send it over to the 12 in San Francisco, and it would send it down. Logically, that makes a lot of sense. The problem is that we had no idea that the computing age, the technology age that we're in, would blow up the way that it did and would get super, super sophisticated the way that it did, which is why when you go to your internet service provider, they will immediately give you one external IP address and no more. At least, again, here in North America and in Europe usually, unless you ask them and pay them for more. You're always at your home. You're going to be assigned one external IP address, and typically those are grouped, by the way. But they're going to be assigning one external IP address to your router, and then your router is going to do the name address translation into your local home, and then you can have, however you configure it, you can have multiple computers and devices on your home system, depending on how sophisticated that system is. And the same thing goes for offices and home networks and big corporations and all that stuff. They're going to have one external IP address unless they pay for multiples, and then they're going to have an internal LAN network, which will all join up into those few IP addresses that have been given to you as an external address for your network. Then those will communicate out over to the greater interwebs. So we really didn't have any idea how big this was going to get and how complex this was going to get. And up until recently, we've been kind of trying to deal with what do we do about this ever expanding, need to do IPv6. So, or to do networking. And so we came up with IPv6, which was actually quite impressive, because what IPv6 basically does is it removes the need, allegedly, it moves the need for much of the IPv4 networking infrastructure that we talk about on a regular basis here on the Bird Dog Live show. And so what it does is it allows you to get rid of, a fair bit of stuff, by the way. But I wrote it down here. Okay, so you no longer need things like NAT, so network address translation, with IPv6. You don't need ARP, which is crazy to me. And you don't, if it's done correctly, I still think we'll need this in some fashion, but you won't even potentially need a DHCP server if IPv6 is implemented correctly. The thing about it is that with IPv6, your device has two IPv addresses that gets generated on every device that has IPv6. Okay, so the first thing I want to do is I'm going to just pull up as an example here. I'm going to pull up the actual network settings that I've got for my computer, just so that you can see them as an example. Now, my network here in my office does not have IPv6 running as a service, okay, which means that one of the functions in this office, one of the functions for IPv6 is currently off, and you'll see that here when I switch over. So I don't know, hopefully you can read this. Let me see. Is that full bandwidth? It is full bandwidth. Okay, so maybe I will. Okay, that's all we can do. So here on my screen, you can see my two fiber connections back to my 4250 here in my server, and they're called Ethernet, but they're actually fiber. So Ethernet adapter and Ethernet 2, those are my two connections that go to my 4250, which then pipes the stream out to StreamYard. And that's actually technically not true. It pipes out the NDI stream over to this computer, which then pipes it to StreamYard. But anyways, that's semantics. So here we go. We have our IPv4 information. 192.168.1 is my network. And both of those connections into my network have their own IP addresses. So one is 1.248 and one is 1.45. These are IPv4s. It is a 22255, WAC24 network, and my default gateway is, typically it's either this or 254, but it's the first digit on the range of my subnet, so it's 192.168.1.1. Okay, that's where my default gateway is, and that's issued automatically through my DHCP service. What you'll notice here is there is something called a link local IPv6 address. What this is an IPv6 unique address generated by my computer that is unique to this world. And that is because link local addresses are generated based off of your MAC address, your network card's MAC address. And so I can have two network connections to this computer and have two individual link local addresses. And so you'll notice that each of these are individuals. They're unique in the way that they're designed because each of these network connections have their own MAC addresses. And so when we make a connection, you may just have one network connection, by the way, but you turn on IPv6, and I can show you where to do that, actually. So if I go to Control Panel, inside Control Panel, you can make sure, if yours isn't showing the link local address, you can turn this on by going to Control Panel, okay? And then we want to click on Network and Sharing, and we're going to click on Advanced Adapter Settings. And then we're going to right-click on our connection, so Ethernet, right? This is that first one, Ethernet. We're going to say Properties, And then we're going to scroll down and make sure that this box is checked. If that box is checked or unchecked, check it and then say OK. This will then, you can rerun in command prompt ipconfig. Okay, config. And it will then spit out the link local IPv6 address. This is the address that your computer has generated that's unique to yours. Okay. Now, ignore this little number right here. This is something that Microsoft does with the link local addresses. Ignore that for now. That's not an actual IPv6. That's not a typical IPv6 address, but that's just something Microsoft is doing. But I have my own link local address. This is all I need to troubleshoot NDI over IPv6. And the great thing about IPv6 and why Balu says that he uses it every single day is because IPv6 does not communicate on the same level that IPv4 communicates on, which means that if you know the IPv6 address of your camera, you can access it on a web UI over the IPv6 protocol. Okay? So we can use it, for example, when we botch the static IP settings of a camera, because the IPv4 settings are not the same as IPv6, which means that we can use them independently. So you're going to look at this and say, well, John, how on earth would I know what the IPv6 address is of a bird dog device? Fair enough. I'm going to show you. So we can use the MAC address. Remember what I said earlier? The MAC address of my network adapter is generating my link local address on the IPv6. So now we can use that to actually show, we can use the MAC address of our device to generate what the link local address is, and they're all generated the same way. So it's not something unique that's done necessarily exclusively, like there's no individual formula. It's actually generated the same way across all IPv4 stuff. So what I want you to do, I want you to go to your favorite browser, and I want you to type in MAC address to IPv6. All right. And it's going to bring up whatever, a search here that you're going to use. And the one that I always gravitate towards, but it's not exclusive that you need to do it, is this one by NetTools. And what they say is go ahead and fill in the MAC address of your device. And so if I were to do that, I have a BirdDog Flex in. Okay, this is an encoder. And look, on here I have the serial number. It says serial, but it's actually the MAC address of the unit. So I can just type that in. So E, 8. I don't need to read this out to you. That would be insulting. Type it in and fill out. Oops, I missed something here. E8, EB, 1B. You have to fill it in completely, by the way. Don't miss any of them, or it will tell you it's not right. Okay, so I type it in, and it gives us our IPv6 address from this website. Now, we can get into how it's done, but that's kind of more like, it's more binary talk and like how things actually get converted over. And that's not really the purpose of today's show. Today I want to show you how to use this information to get into your device. Now, this is particularly helpful with BirdDog devices that do not have a screen, right? Because the screens, the 4K family, they show the IP address. And so like we don't really need to know that. However, if you're still having issues getting into the device while it's showing the IP address, for example, this is a way that you can do this. But on the bottom of all of our cameras, we include the MAC address. And so you have the information to get to this level. And if the device is not struggling with the network level interaction, if it's not, if the baseboard isn't nuked or the NDI chip isn't malfunctioning or something, it's getting on the network, but you can't access it on IPv4, this is the way that you can get to it. And why Balu loves this method is because customers ship us their stuff on really obscure NDI or IP configurations, static configurations, where like there's no way we're gonna know how to get to it, but we can get by it by using IPv6, because IPv6 is just a different communication level altogether, and I'll explain a little bit of how that's happening in a minute. So now I'm going to take this IPv6 address that has been generated from my MAC address, because they're all generated the same way. And by the way, a link local address is going to start with FE80. And then notice this right here, you have dual, what is this, semicolons? There are two of these. What this means is that these fields, these values are just zeros. Okay? And without confusing things too much, you can only eliminate a group of zeros. Okay, so a lot of IPv6 addresses are going to have zeros in them, groups of zeros. You can only eliminate one group of zeros by doing this. If you had another set of zeros later on in the link local, you could do one or the other, but you can't shorten the IPv6 address multiple times doing this, but you can do it once, which means that this actually says FE80 semicolon 0000 semicolon 0000 semicolon EAEB. Okay, that's what's going on here. You're also going to notice that there are similarities to my MAC address to the IPv6 link local address, which is why we say that these are all unique, because every device in the world is supposed to have a unique MAC address, right? And it's actually a violation of manufacturing if they have the same, which is an issue when you start like imaging computers and they all have the same MAC address and you don't actually do like sysprep on them. Again, maybe a foreign language to you. Sorry about that. But you'll notice like E8EB. Well, this is EAEB. Well, that's really similar. Well, what's happening there is we're actually flipping some of the values in the creation process. They're getting flipped. And, oh, look, you could even read here for yourself how to actually the conversion process works. But it's flipping some of the values and reformatting them to, here we go, convert the first hexadecimal to binary. And that's what's going on here. And then invert the bit at index 6. So it makes it from a 0 to a 1, or 0 to a 1, or a 1 to a 0. So it inverts it, and it changes the value. So it changes it from an 8 to an A. All right, that's what's going on here. So that's why it's slightly different, but you're going to see similarities. And so 1B, oh yeah, you also like randomly insert FF into the sequence. And so 1B, and then right here, it says throw ff.fe in the middle. So we see FFFE. Okay, that's a part of the conversion over to IPv6, which is why I wasn't going to really get into this on the show, because it's kind of like way more than you need to know. But once we take the MAC address of a bird dog device and we convert it over to IPv6, and if you want to know more about that, you can follow up here on this actual nettools.club address. We can take this information and we can copy it, so Control-C. Now I've plugged in my little Flex encoder. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to type in http:// and then bracket, or however you want to call that, rigid bracket or square bracket, I don't know. And then Control V, which is paste on a Windows PC, and then end bracket. And when I hit enter, it is going to take me to the FlexIn web UI, but on the IPv6 address. Notice that my IPv4 address is not up here, which is typical, especially when you're using like the MDNS name. It takes me to the IPv6/login address. This is not communicating over IPv4. This is communicating over the link local IPv6, which means that if you forget or lose or somebody sabotages your NDI IPv4 level, they get into your devices, they screw around with the network settings, or like you're a new guy on a job and you don't know what the other guy did here, you can get into all of the devices over IPv6 locally. All right? So now, just to prove my theory, I type in the password, and here I am. I am now inside, still on IPv6, but now, look, I can see what IPv4 information is being relayed. And I can go into this, I can change the IPv4 information and hit apply, and it won't boot me out of the dashboard, which I think is really cool, because I can go in here, I can set this to DHCP, I can hit apply, I can go to dashboard, I can reboot, or I can restart video, I can reboot device, and I can stay on the IPv6. Now, if you hit reboot devices, it's going to log you out. But I can stay on the IPv6 level, and manipulate things on the IPv4 level and make sure that they're working before I leave this screen. So this is crazy helpful when you're trying to troubleshoot things that are malfunctioning on a network level. You can actually kind of rise above it onto a separate networking level, IPv6, and troubleshoot the IPv4 level stuff that's happening inside of the device while not getting booted out while you change the IPv4 values. Okay? It's so crazy. It's really helpful. And if you have this little bit of knowledge, which I'm happily to share with you for free for the cost of admission to the Bird Dog John live show here at birddogjohn.tv, this stuff can help you get into, again, you don't have to be a network admin to understand how to get here. You might not know how it's all done behind the scenes, but to get here, I've given you all the tools to interact with your devices on this level. Now, a word of warning before we wrap up here with this, topic. Some networks, if you're doing NDI on a corporate network, some networks turn off IPv6 as a group policy. Okay, so on your computer, you're not allowed to turn on IPv6. So if you go to Control Panel, Network Sharing, you go into the adapter settings and you try and turn that on, there may be a group policy that doesn't allow you to do that. And you'll either need to use a computer that isn't controlled by the corporation, or you'll need to ask the IT department to allow your device and your devices, your NDI network, to have IPv6 information, if that's the case. But in general, that's how it's done. And it's interacting with your device on a different level than IPv4, which is traditionally what we talk about on this show, and how to troubleshoot and how to configure and all that. Imagine if you could configure your entire IPv4 network while operating at what I think is a higher level of networking, and you can interact with the device, you can change the settings, and you can hit apply and make sure that those settings are working before leaving the web UI because you're running on an IPv6. So that's the advantage of using this. We use it all the time in this office. Balu uses it probably every day or every other day. But I know that my guy one of my guys, he doesn't work for me. He's just a buddy of mine now. He does QA testing for us, and he uses IPv6 all the time to get into the device and to see what's happening on the network level, but not be interacting with it through the network level. Does that make sense? If I go to 192.168.1.175, I'm traveling through the web UI and using the IPv4 level of the network to interact with the product. If I'm using the IPv6 method, I'm actually still interacting with it, obviously, over the network port, but I'm not interacting on the IPv4 level, which is where the NDI information is traveling. So it gives you that flexibility. It's a little piece of knowledge that helps you understand a little more about how the products are connecting. IPv6 works on our devices, like that we have IPv6 local addresses on our devices, and more on that coming soon, by the way, because the world is changing quickly. But what's really neat is we can troubleshoot, we can get into our networks. For those of you who are running productions or are new to the networking world, learn this simple little tool, and it will save you mountains of heartache when it comes to interacting and customizing and changing your products. And by the way, if you are doing your due diligence and you're buying products for your NDI network and you're cataloging them, okay, here's the MAC address, here's the IP address, here's the da-da-da-da-da. Add an IPv6 address thing in there too. On like your spreadsheet or however you're cataloging it, add the IPv6 address, convert them on a website just like I did here in this show, and have that in your database. The toolkit that you're developing just got way deeper because it gives you one more element to figure out, is this a network malfunction or is this a product malfunction or what's going on here? Gives you the ability to try things quickly, have that data at your fingertips. It's always nice to spend. I think if I spent 30 minutes with a list of MAC addresses, I could crank out, 100 IPv4s. I could probably do three a minute or something like that if I really went to town on it. So 100%, it's worth your time to learn the IPv6 stuff. And then you've got that tool in your toolkit as you go along. So hopefully you find that helpful. And we'll go back to the show and take some questions, whichever questions you might have. All right, I'll kill the recording and go back to my little playlist. And let's see what's going on in the chat, because I do see things kind of moving along here in over in the chat. So what did you do to that poor monitor? What did I do to that monitor? On the back of the monitor? What poor monitor? What are you talking about? Are you referring to my sticker that's on there? Is that what you're talking about? That I covered up the manufacturing logo and I put a bird dog logo on it? That one? Is that what you're talking about? We'll have to follow up with you, Mr. Facebook or Facebook individual. I actually don't know if you're a Mr. or not because it doesn't tell me anything in StreamYard with Facebook. That's like a beef I have. Why they can't bring over the names. Brent, Mr. Facebook user, Mr. Brent. Hopefully you're doing well. Thanks for jumping on the show with us today. Always appreciate that. And for those of you who are over on LinkedIn, I don't actually know if you're over there because StreamYard doesn't tell me how many people are watching on LinkedIn. So if you do me a favor and join us over on birddogjohn.tv, that one does tell me that you're watching. And you can subscribe to the show there. That's where the support show is hosted most of the time. So actually all of the time, that's where the support show is going to be. In addition to other, Facebook, another YouTube channel, Twitch, and a few other places. But birddogjohn.tv, if you would be so kind to subscribe over there, that would help me out big time. Good stuff. Hey, John, what's going on, Lewis? Now that you use vMix, do you know why they don't allow more than 8 NDI inputs, even if you have a very powerful PC? I think Wirecast and TriCaster are also 8 maximum. Does NDI have limits? I actually don't know if there is a programming reason for that. I don't know. I haven't hit the 8 input threshold yet, actually, even on vMix. But I suspect it has something to do with the SDK integration. I can't imagine if everybody's doing it, then it's got to be a limitation further up the chain. It's not that nobody has figured out how to do it, but I don't know. Let's see if anyone else in the chat does. Hey, I run more than 8 NDI inputs on vMix. How are you running into a limit? It may. Hey, everybody. So the Mac that I'm running this on, hopefully this is coming through all right. The Mac that I'm running this show on just reboot. And let me make sure the audio's here. Yeah, okay. Wow, it just tanked. Now, I got right back into the show, but I don't know what that looked like on your end. I'm glad it didn't quit. I guess the recording. See, that's why we record things when we're doing demonstrations, because that was really annoying. But I booted up StreamYard on this machine, and then this machine came back. I mean, the Mac reboots instantly, so that was nice. But, yeah, I don't know what happened there. I'm really sorry if I've missed anybody's comments. The last one I saw was from MTash saying, reached a limit. And then Frink says, he's back. And Pandorica, hey, what's going on? Says, hey, there we go. So, yes, sorry, the Mac just randomly restarted without any warning whatsoever. And then it was like, do you want to submit a crash report? So my apologies. Let's go back to, let's see if anybody has a response for Lewis. So, hey, I run more than 8 NDI inputs on vMix. Maybe you're running into a licensing issue. Hey, Josh, because these are the restrictions that were indicated to me from vMix, 8HD 44K. On their website, they mark those limitations too. Do you work in HD? He says, yes, I do. 1080p, and I have the 4K version of vMix. We run 9 P200s at 1080p, and some encoders, all NDI, and that all seems to work, have latest version of vMix, if that helps. I bought the 4K version of vMix as I needed the vMix caller levels. Greetings, everyone. This is an interesting topic today. What's going on, GoWeb? Hopefully you're doing well. Oh, hat's off. Yes, the hat is off. I don't know if this is hats off to John or if this is John, where's your hat? But yes, I walked in this morning and one of my guys was like, hey, nice haircut. And I was like, well, I've had this for like 3 or 4 days. And he's like, yeah, but you wear a hat. And I was like, ah, touche. So there you go. Maybe we've reached a limit. Great information on IPv6. Thanks for explaining it to a non-network nerd level. That's most what I do, because I would be laughed at if I stood around with legit network engineers. Although I am a network nerd, Padawan in training. There you go. Well done. Well, I'm glad. So we can talk more about the history of IPv6, kind of like where it came from, because I think it's really interesting. Like, little known fact, when you go to google.com, you are generally traveling over IPv6, which is why now, and you'll notice google.com is super fast when it responds. That's one of the advantages of IPv6, is that we're able to do aggregation correctly. Okay, so these are terms that you may run into if you're doing like a Network Plus course, for example. The little pseudo example that I gave was basically what aggregation was supposed to be for IPv4, where you have these individual routers in these cities or places around the world, and they all have, the first octet is that region. So then when one region's talking to the other, it knows, oh, this needs to go over to San Francisco or to the western region or whatever. And it would aggregate quickly that way. The issue is that we had to expand fast, and routing is not necessarily based on physical location. And so, it's not 1 through 12 east to west or 1 through 255 east to west around the world. That's not really how it works out, because networks don't really work that way. They don't think by geolocation. They think more about like path of least resistance. And so how data travels is not one-to-one with how far it is for me to get to Melbourne, for example. So there were some flaws in that. And then aggregation became very bloated, and we didn't do it very well. And so it got out of hand. 70s, 80s, 90s, it just blew up on us. And now, how many devices are corporations? I mean, shoot, we've got thousands and thousands of cameras in the wild that all have unique MAC addresses and have to be configured correctly in order to work properly, right? So IPv6 is really cool because everybody has a unique address, which we will likely still use local networks in the IPv6 realm. But theoretically, you could use all of those unique addresses, and you wouldn't need a DHCP, and you wouldn't need an ARP table, and everyone would just kind of know who everyone is, and it works a lot faster because of aggregation. And so that's kind of where I'm going with this, is when you go to google.com, first of all, website's cached here on this machine. So let me kill the playlist for a minute. Let's go over to this screen. And what I'm going to do is open an incognito mode, which basically gets rid of, let me close all these windows before I go here. Okay, so we'll go back to my page here. I'm going to right click, say incognito, and this is basically loading from start. It's not using the cache on the machine. It's not doing a few other things, but anyways, but if we just go to like google.com, type it in, and we hit enter. I'm sorry, we hit enter. I don't know why it didn't go through. Boom! It like instantly pulls up. Now, this site is really basic, and there's like really nothing to it. But it is really fast when you're going to it, and it's because Google uses IPv6 primarily to do this. And then when you like type in birddog, .tv, okay, and then we click on this, it routes you to the IPv4 address of our website. And so that's a little slower to pull up because it's not utilizing IPv6 anymore. It's using the slower IPv4 version. It still pulls it up. I mean, I didn't have to wait an eternity for this to show up. This isn't dial-up, folks. But it's not as fast as IPv6 is. And so when we move over to that, and the prediction right now is IPv6 is probably coming in the next 5 to 10 years. Okay, so 2032, 2035, maybe in that realm, will all be running on IPv6. But so it's still going to be a slow transition, but it's actually already started. Okay, the transition's actually already started, and you may not know it. For example, you may not have known that Google.com was IPv6. So there you go. But we can definitely go through a lot of this. One of the fun things with IPv6 is that it's all self-configurated. So it all does self-configuration is the phrase I need to use. And so you have so a common issue we have is I don't want to memorize all these IP addresses. Like 192.168.1.45 is my computer, but 46 is a telephone? I don't know. So I don't want to have to memorize all that. And so then you look at IPv6 addresses, and it's like, oh, geez. Like, look how long how am I going to memorize that? It's like, well, first of all, you don't have to memorize it. You just need to know what the MAC address is, and you can find that out pretty easy. And second of all, it's the same algorithm to generate IPv6 as it is around the world. And so it's not like you're customizing a subnet to operate. Okay, that's not what this is. This is everybody, everywhere has a unique IP address. Now, the other thing that I wrote down about this, because I thought this was fascinating, is IPv4. Okay, IPv4 addresses, we say is like a WAC24, right? And that gives you the ability, the ones that we design, the single subnets. It's a WAC24 network. It gives you the ability to have 256 unique addresses inside your own network. But if you were to just do like a full-on, everybody gets an IP address in this world, we would max out at, logically at about 4 billion addresses, IP addresses. But usable ones in the IPv4 realm is only about 1 billion. And newsflash, there are more than 1 billion things in this world that need an IP address. All right. With IPv6 and the way that it's configured, you could have, it's 128 bits, okay? So the address is 128 bits, which means that you can do 2 to the power of 128, which basically means, okay, here's the analogy that you need to understand. If every air molecule in the world needed an IPv6 address, we could do it 6 times. Okay? That's what that means. 128-bit addressing means that every air molecule in the world could have 6 IPv6 addresses and we wouldn't be maxed out. It's an insane amount of addressing, which is why you can start eliminating all of the things that you need to group things in locations or zones or routers. Or like, you can get rid of a lot of the network logical portion of things because everybody can have a unique address and we can do aggregation properly. Okay, so it's a huge jump forward. It's a huge leap forward. Now, where we are right now is known as dual stacking, where you can do IPv6 and IPv4, which allows us to troubleshoot IPv4s with IPv6s, right? That's what we just did. That was the demo. So you can troubleshoot it because your network card has the ability to dual stack, which means that it gives you an IPv6 address and it gives you an IPv4, which is amazing because, again, it opens up an opportunity that otherwise we wouldn't have, and you can troubleshoot things pretty efficiently. So really, really cool little tidbits about IPv6 if you're hanging around, if you're still hanging around, that you're able to learn, at least from what I wrote a bunch of stuff down just because I didn't really want it to get away from me here. The big piece with IPv6 though, and I think that this is I think that this is going to be the catalyst when NDI starts toying around with IPv6, and I don't know when that will be. When IPv6 comes to devices like the Bird Dog fleet, everything can be auto-configured. Okay, the device, you don't need to type in an address anymore. Static networks will be a thing of the past. DHCP networks will pretty much be a thing of the past. Everything will be auto-configured because everything will have a unique MAC address, which means that everything will have a unique IPv6 address, which means that you don't need all of the things to help configure your network anymore. Even static, even discovery server, all that stuff kind of goes away. And so it will be very interesting to see what comes of the future with IPv6, because it's a very different way of doing networking, and it allows us to efficiently connect point A to point B, wherever that is, with very little heavy configuration like IPv4 requires. So look forward to the future, folks, in networking especially, because it's so great. Really excited. I have 4 SDI and 12 NDI sources into my TriCaster TC1. Works well since I put in the Netgear 4250. I love hearing that. So he's got 12 NDI sources. So that threshold, I could try it on my TC1. Albert, what? Oh, you have a TC1. Okay, so yeah, I could just load up my TC1 and see what I can do. I think I've done more than 8 on the TC1 now that I think about it. So I don't think that's a limitation on TriCaster. It would be odd if they did, because it's probably just No, because TriCaster isn't pulling in the full feeds until you switch to program. And so it's only doing one full NDI feed in, and the rest are proxy, which are, 6 megs? 3 megs? I forget what it is these days. TriCaster uses proxy NDI. Oh, here we go. Until you select the source, then it uses the full. That's why it is superior to vMix on uses of NDI. Those are strong words. I try not to say things like superior, but bravo. That is a strong way of putting it. TriCaster, when we're talking about NDI, yeah, obviously that's the native platform that's the company that made NDI, so they're going to do it obviously the optimal way, and they'll probably do it a way that's not available to the other manufacturers over a proprietary SDK. Like the in the box. Here's the thing, it's like, oh geez. NDI, you can download the SDK for NDI and put it on any camera. As of NAB this year, we saw at launch that there's now a Works with NDI certification program that's going to be happening with NDI.TV, the company. And so that's like another step of probably trying to, yes, you can download the SDK for free off of our website and implement it into your product, but then you need to send that over to us to make sure that you're doing NDI correctly. All right, so that's what's going on there. And I think it's a good checks and balance. I think it's wise that NDI did that because it provides some sort of standard, and it stops all of these like mom and pop shops from flooding the market with NDI stuff that's not like truly configured correctly for NDI performance. So now you can get a stamp on your product that says works with NDI or approved by NDI or something like that, and that will carry some weight with the customer, I think. So TriCaster was invented by the same company that invented NDI. And so, yes, they likely have some sort of behind-the-scenes formula that allows them to optimally use the NDI protocol that's not available to the rest of the public. Maybe not. I don't know. And maybe I'm just assuming that, but it does seem that TriCaster has an edge over many other NDI ingest softwares and programs and hardwares that isn't available to the mass public. And like, they're allowed to do that, by the way. They don't have to give us tell us the recipe for the 12 spices and seasonings that they use to make their thing work. They probably should actually do that. But anyways, I digress. But yeah, TriCaster's reliable and really rock solid when you're bringing in NDI inputs, and I can attest to that. I have a refurbished TC1 here, and it works great. It's really good. So strongly recommend TriCaster if that's within your budget realm. I recall all the talk and worrying about running out of IPv4 addresses. Yeesh. I mean, that's been coming along for a while, but the current prediction is it's likely still 10 years away before we really need to do mass migration. But it is coming up. I mean, there are more and more products. Look on your phone. You get IPv6 addresses on your phone, when you, especially, anyways, it's coming along. And I don't think that we should be blind to that. I think actually NDI should capitalize on that early. Wouldn't it be so cool if the whole NDI infrastructure moved to IPv6 capable, and then now our network recommendations would be very different. Very different and way simpler. If anybody's watching, that can help me make that a real deal. That'd be awesome. James says, I'd like to add an audience mic or two. What mic do you recommend for that purpose? I'll throw that out to the crowd too. I will tell you that I have used multiple microphones in this scenario, and I'm happy to share that along with you. Yoink. Let's open up a web browser. Have a little look-see over on Sweetwater. I'll show you what it is. I get in trouble when I show Amazon, so I don't get in trouble by moderators. I get in trouble by the audience. They don't like me shopping on Amazon. So sweetwater.com here in the U.S., that's where we can look at gear. It's not necessarily the best price in the world, but it's a great place to look at all the stuff. You can also go to B&H. By the way, B&H is a Bird Dog partner, and they're friends of ours. So, okay, so the first, what is it? So I didn't have any money when I first started playing around with this, and I went out to just do some market research, and I just wanted to get a fairly level, flat, not bassy. I don't need any of that type of microphone, and I landed on choosing the Behringer C2 pencil microphones. They're just little condenser mics, and I set them up on either side of the stage, and I pointed them at the audience. And these are great microphones. You can see, I mean, I say great. They're great for the price. So they're $60 for a pair, which is whoa, red flag. But they actually work really well. I have these currently at home because we changed over to a different microphone, which I'll talk about next. But these little guys, super easy. They need phantom power. They come in a nice little carrying case. They come with everything you need to kind of get them set up. No need for a windscreen when you're using audience microphones unless you're outside. But they're just a pair of pencil mics. They have a fairly flat pattern, pickup pattern. It's just basically all around, and it rejects everything past the actual condenser microphone and back. It does pick up a little bit behind, by the way, so just heads up, if you're putting these on stage, you might get some stage noise out of them. But they work pretty well, and they come in this little case, and that was fine and dandy. So the Behringer C2 microphones were a pretty good choice, and for the price, I was kind of happy with that. Now, I then went away from C2 because we went with a different one, but I did end up buying a single Behringer, I think it's called the B5. Is that right? The B5 microphone. I bought this little pencil microphone as well. Very different pickup pattern. Okay? Very different pickup pattern than the C2s. I learned fairly quickly. Also comes in a fancy little carrying case, but it's $80 for one. And there's an additional filter that you can put on the end that changes the pickup pattern to slight rejection to basically an entire, omnidirectional pickup pattern. Okay? So that little filter on the back basically makes it an omnidirectional pickup pattern. Now, there are lots of YouTube videos online explaining the differences between, explaining the advantages and disadvantages of each of these microphones that I'm sharing with you. But if you're just looking for something inexpensive, these microphones can be placed in the middle of the auditorium. They don't have to be placed on the stage. Be placed in the middle of the auditorium, either from the ceiling, they can point down. You can place them anywhere, and they'll pick up the audience, and you don't have to be on stage because they pick up sound behind them as well. So the B5 is a little bit better, in my opinion. I only have one of these. I might get a second one just to have a pair. But the B5, pretty simple microphone. relatively decent pickup pattern. I would say, and does Sweetwater do this? Yeah. So we have the spec sheet here for the B5. That does not seem to be downloading. I clicked on it, but we'll maybe it'll kick off here in a second. But anyways, the spec sheet will show you the actual pattern, and it will show you the new tab. Let's go. Chip, tap, chip. That's probably why it's not loading. So what is going on here? Oh, because I clicked on it and it tried to load it. Okay, so you can get it off the Behringer website as well, by the way, the actual stuff. But it's useful to have that data. But quite frankly, as far as I'm concerned, if you're about to drop a bunch of money on a microphone, definitely use your use options like Lens Rentals or something like that, where they can let you borrow it for the weekend, and then you don't have to pay full sticker price, and you can kind of decide for yourself if you want to do something along that road. So B5 was not too bad. It's a little nicer than the C2s, naturally, and you have that option to turn them into basically, omnidirectional microphones. The next thing, somebody was gracious enough to give me this microphone. I hope he gave it to me. I need to look back in the communication with him. But he sent me a DBX RTAM reference microphone, which is this guy. Let me see here. Yes, I believe it's this one. And this microphone is $125. Obviously, you would be using this to ring out rooms and what have you. But I have found that it works great as a room reference microphone for streaming. What we do is we mount this in the back of an auditorium, and we use this as the ambient sound for the stream to go out onto YouTube and whatever. So as the group is interacting or singing or moving around or responding or whatever's happening, this microphone means that the effects that are happening in the room can also be captured and be translated into the effects that are happening, be translated for the stream. What I love about this, okay, now you got me preaching. So what I love about this idea is that if they're in the back of the room, this reference microphone can actually pick up the sound that the sound guy is making in the room, okay? And you can dial this in or out of that stream as you see fit, but it gives like a genuine room feel. So if the sound guy, and this is where I come in, I'm running sound and I'm running, like a reverb or an echo, or I'm running a decay or a delay or whatever it is that I'm doing on vocals or instruments or whatever, and I'm piping that through. So in particular, let's just talk about vocals real quick. When I'm running vocals, I like to expand the sound so it doesn't sound like they're just talking into a microphone, okay? I like to widen it out a little bit. It gives a little bit of forgiveness in the vocal. I like to add a little bit of like artificial room reverb to the voice. When I do that, it widens the voice. It provides a fair bit of depth when you're listening to it. The problem is that if you add that same effect to the stream, it sounds so artificial. It does not sound like it sounds like in the room, because the room is also giving back, reverb. It's also dynamic in terms of how the sound is being absorbed into the audience and in all these bags of water that are sitting in the seats. And so as the sound decays, as it passes over the room and into the ears of the listeners, you want to provide that sound of what it actually sounds like in the room, not the digital effect, which is what it sounds like, straight from the board. So a reference microphone like this one can help you provide that context that's happening in the room onto the stream. Now, it's not a perfect one-for-one. It does sound a little bit artificial, but it's way better than adding the effect directly on the vocalist on the stream. So having a reference microphone do the effects, the room effects, and it's way simpler meaning that your streamer doesn't have to be a proficient sound guy to do this. He just has to understand the two levels, the main microphone level and the ambient room level. Okay, so if somebody's on stage speaking, you don't really want a lot of reference microphone, right? Because it's going to catch the people shuffling and moving their seats and the kids crying and the pages turning and the phones going off and all that crap that you don't want in your digital world. But if you have audience participation or interaction or anything like that, a reference microphone like this running in the background, mixed into the mix can be really helpful because it will give context to what is actually being heard in the room, and it will provide the natural reverb that let's say somebody's speaking on stage, it will provide that natural reverb that's already happening in the room, which will widen his voice and will not make it sound like he's talking into just like a microphone like this all the time. It's unnatural to listen to something like that. It doesn't make any sense. Now, in a studio, okay, I've got sound dampening. I've got this is all kind of set up for me to talk to you through like a broadcast microphone, kind of like a radio or kind of like a podcast, right? But if that's not what you're doing online, if that's not what you're streaming with, then, and you want to provide context as to like, here's what's actually being heard and what's actually happening in the room, a reference microphone like this is really helpful. Now, it won't pick up a bunch of the low end, and so you're going to need to know that if you've got drums and you're getting a big heavy kick drum, this isn't going to pick that up because microphone is not wide enough to handle that. But it will definitely do natural reverb, and it will allow you to not have to use the heavy effects that you're probably already using inside the house. So those are the three that I have direct use of. I went from cheap, then I went to like not quite as cheap, and then I went to, this one's $125. Somebody gave it to me though, so it's super cheap. But a good little measurement microphone. And you can also use it to ping the room, by the way, to white noise or pink noise the room. That's what that microphone is actually built for. But I find that it works exceptionally well when providing context for streaming. Exceptionally well. Like if I wanted you to hear all of the P4K fan, I can hear it running. If I wanted you to hear the ambient sound of the air conditioning running, if I wanted you to hear the creaks of my chair, I would get that microphone and point it at me, and it would pick all that stuff up because that's what I'm hearing. That's what is happening in this room. But this microphone rejects all of that. It even rejects my proximity effect of like getting all up on the microphone. It keeps it pretty level. This microphone specifically, and don't get me started on the RA20, but this microphone particularly is great for this function. I think it's better than the SM7B, but that is a discussion for another day, not for today. And I love the SM7B. Don't get me wrong, I do love it. It's a really cool mic, and I've wanted it just to have it. I want it for my home studio, but I don't need that. Actually, I'm using the B5 at my home studio. Believe it or not. I'm using the C2. Why am I not using the B5? Oh, the B5 is here? I got too many microphones, folks. But anyways. Now you got me talking about something I'm all excited about. IPv6 microphones. Oh, man, today is a red letter day. Happy Thursday, everybody. Happy Thursday. I'm doing a little traveling this weekend. I'll be headed out on Saturday morning to Nashville. I'll be back on Sunday night. So more on that trip when I get back, I guess. There you go. All right, let's get back to the chat. So, James, that was a really long-winded way of answering your question. Hey, Josh, does TriCaster do full NDI multi-recording? Great question. I have no idea. Anybody want to chime in on that? Heinrich, how are you? Hi, Josh. Do you use Dante Audio on your TriCaster? And if you do, how is it working for you so far? I don't use the TriCaster. I do use Dante, though. So that was still not an answer. I mean, it was an answer, but I guess it's hard to determine if that was an answer or not. Anyways, good stuff. Well done. Okay. Just checking on things here. We're an hour and 20 minutes into the show. Thank you, everybody, for hanging around. I really appreciate that. And do me a big favor while we're here, if you go over to birddogjohn.tv and subscribe to that channel, shamelessly plug it. That is the support show channel. Everything that I do in this in a live capacity for this show is broadcasted there. And so that channel is slowly growing. I'm not doing it to monetize anything. It would be great if I could make money, but I'm not doing it to monetize it because I don't think that that's the purpose of today, of what we're doing here. But I do love to validate, hey, the show is growing and moving in positive ways, and people are paying attention. And everything that I cut up on this show, so all my recordings and all that stuff that I do, show up on this channel. So if you want to see the highlights from these shows, highlights, that's what you want to call it. If you want to see the highlights of this show, and then, yeah, that's definitely that microphone's way out of position. So if you want to see the highlights of the show and you don't want to watch the 2-hour recordings, I'll cut all of the things up that I'm doing and put them on there as digestible bits. And so today's recording will definitely appear there. That is the plan. Okay, let me fix this NTG2 because it's really out of position. I learned something about NTG2. I learned something about shotgun microphones is you want them to... I'm going to break this thing. You want them to actually point right here. Much like much like a lav mic or whatever, but you want them to point here. And so if I lean forward or move like this, if it's pointed at my mouth and I move, you stop hearing me. You just hear the ambient sound of my voice. But if it's pointed here, I can shift in my chair, I can move like this, and it's always going to be leveled to pick up my voice in this area, which is relatively consistent regardless where I move in the frame, right? So if I was I'm not using the NTG2, but if I wanted to, we could level it for that. And you know what? Why not? Why not do that for a hot second? So let me bring up the NTG2. It is on this one. And you should hear it now. Let me pull it up in... You should hear both mics, by the way, right now. Let me pull up YouTube, though. I want to hear what's going on here. So, birddogjohn.tv right now. And don't forget to subscribe. Let me pull up YouTube, though. I want to hear what's going on here. Okay, so both microphones are on. birddogjohn.tv. Now, this microphone is... Don't forget to subscribe. YouTube, though. I want to hear what's going on here. Okay, so both microphones are on. birddogjohn. And I got a loop because I'm listening to it on here. Crap. So I can't actually even hear this because... Oh, you know what I'll do? I'll fix it. I'll fix your wagon. So I can't actually even hear this because... Oh, you know what I'll do? I'll fix it. I'll fix your wagon. So I can't actually even hear this because... Oh, you know what I'll do? I'll fix it. I'll fix your wagon. Okay. I got it. So I can't actually even hear this because... Oh, you know what I'll do? I'll fix it. Okay. Hopefully I'm back. Sorry about that, folks. I don't know how many of those loops you were hearing, but I was hearing a whole bunch of them. So, all right, now we're going to pull this down, turn this on. All right, I've muted. All right, I have muted channels 3 and 4. I'm going to add NTG2 to this channel, okay? And let's turn that one up and this one down. Yeesh, this sounds terrible now. What did I change here? I changed something. Ooh, you can really hear everything though, eh? Am I peaking? I'm not peaking here, am I? Anyways, this is not... I'm not using the RE20 at this point. Definitely sounds a lot different, eh? And you can hear, like, the squeaks of my chair and everything. And it sounds so weird. It's just, like, hard to follow because I'm listening to it here. Am I, like, super duper quiet to everybody? But you can hear, like, all the reflections off the desk and everything. You can hear it all. Maybe I'll move this a little closer to me. Maybe that'll give me a little bit more. Let's just... I don't know. What do you think about that? It's an interesting... I'm listening to myself on YouTube, but I can't hear it any other way. I can verify that it's working. There's a clear low end that is missing, right? Like, obviously it's not going to be like the RE20, but there's a clear low end that's not happening here. That just sounds so empty. And it's hard. This is like painful for me to listen to. Let me know what you guys... Let me know what you think. Okay. So, senseless. Make it stop. Have you ever tried to use a shotgun mic as voice? I mean, use them as a close mic, not out of shot. I have an engineer inform me that others do that for... Boo. We tested and it sounds good. So I have thought about that. Matter of fact, I had this microphone positioned right here one time, and I could definitely do it again. I had it positioned up off the desk so it wasn't hearing these reflections, because you're probably hearing those reflections coming off of the desk, which are then bouncing around the room, right? Which is the beautiful thing about this, is I don't have to power it as much, but it picks up so much more of my presence right here, and it eliminates everything else that's going on. So the key, obviously, is to get this guy as close as you can. There he is in the shot, right? And he's got the big dead cat on there. But that's about as close as I can get it. And if I talk up to the camera, I think it sounds good. But like this chair, like you can hear every single squeak that this chair makes, and it drives me bonkers. So I'm gonna jump back over to YouTube. And the reflections. I don't like the reflections that you hear in this microphone at this distance. And it's because I haven't sound treated this room. This is a hard wall behind us, you know, like it's definitely going to provide those reflections. So if I bring back the RE20 and I slowly bring this back up to reasonable levels, and I take this one down, and then I listen to myself, man, it's crazy the differences. Again, totally different microphones, different purposes. But I honestly would trade the obstruction of this microphone in the shot for the quality of the audio that it brings, because it's 100% worth it. And I know that there are guys in the field that totally disagree with me, because they think you shouldn't have the microphone in the shot if you can afford not to have it in the shot. I think there's a time and a place for that. There's a time and a place for that. This is a little too hot. That you 100% should, especially if it is formatted like a podcast. That's what this is basically a video cast, right? But it's just a little chat show that we have, and having me in the frame with no microphone makes zero difference, I think, in terms of what it is that we can actually do. And so I'd rather have higher quality audio for you than worrying about the obstruction being an eyesore on the shot. Like, I think people understand this. They've seen enough video, and this is just a subjective opinion, by the way. It isn't like by no means matters in any way, but people understand that to capture great audio, it needs to be as close as you can to the subject, and this is a beautiful microphone to do that. And so, I think it makes sense. Voiceover work. Gotcha. Sorry, I blanked for a second there. I've actually done a little voiceover work, believe it or not. I'd be happy to do it again, for that matter. But there you go. John, how does it make you feel that I just plugged my Yeti black mic in via USB and never think about it again? Well, simple minds. Agree, this is not sounding as nice as that from that direction. I do think the RE20 is a bit too bassy when I turn it up here. A mic is fine for a podcast. Yes, I agree. Having it, and again, that's why everybody's so familiar with the SM7B is because it's in every podcast shot. It's the go-to. Everybody uses it. And I would like to get one, like I said, just because I'd like to have one. But what are they running for these days? SM7B. Maybe I could find one on like Reverb or something that's for cheap. 400? Oh, I thought they were cheaper than that. I thought they were like $250 or something like that. Maybe it's because I shop on Reverb. All right, so if you don't know, by the way, Reverb.com, at least here in the U.S., is a used electronics and music website. It's basically like everything. It's like eBay for musical and all that stuff. And there are a lot of great deals on this site. But yeah, I would love to find like this SM7B dynamic microphone 236.24. Yeah, it's more than I'm willing to pay to just have it, you know. I'm not willing to pay that price. It's $399 on Sweetwater, which is I think is a little steep, but it's probably because it's so popular that everyone's buying it. But yeah, I'd love to get one of them one day. It'd be fun. It would be fun. I would guess that 95% of people watching are gear nerds, and we like to see the behind the scenes and the how the sausage is made. Well, I have started doing more tours of my studio just because people have expressed that opinion. Okay, that's perfectly out of the shot now. That was kind of bugging me. So I have been doing a few more tours and stuff like that. I love audio stuff. That's one of my original wheelhouses that I used to hang out in for a lot of the time. But yeah, audio is one of my fun little, because there's so much creativity inside that realm. But it's good stuff. Video is something that I've taken on fair bit over the past 5 years, and I mean I did a little bit before, but not to this extent, not every day for a living. So that's been fun, and yeah, setting up studio lighting, that's been a fun revisit. I did lighting a lot, and I did like technical theater in high school and college, and it's been fun to revisit that and how the stuff has advanced over the ages since I did it all the time. So it's been fun to like re-navigate those worlds and understand all that better. And I do a little bit of photography. I like, I like photography, so I like to, do a lot of nature, landscape stuff, and I go camping a lot, and we've gone on a few trips to very scenic places, so that's been really fun and just kind of feeds those hobbies that I have. So, yeah, learning a lot. I've learned a lot over the ages from, the how to take better pictures, not just on full auto, all that. So once you start learning the basics, then it like kind of starts to translate into other cameras and lenses and all that stuff. So I am the sound guy at my church. Yeah, there's a lot of us around that do that function on weekends. It's amazing how many of them are out here. But all right, so this has been a lot of fun, and feel free. I will export that video and get that up on my YouTube page real soon about IPv4. So if you missed that earlier today, be sure that you follow up on that. But I do have potentially a 1 o'clock meeting that I do need to prep for. That will be in less than 30 minutes. And so I am going to say adios for this week. And the plan is to be back next Tuesday at 11 o'clock Eastern Standard Time. Have another chat about something. So today I woke up this morning and thought I should really talk about IPv6 because that's a great little tool to have. And I've been planning on it ever since. And so it was decided late. But hey, I got the weekend to think about it and do a little travel this week, and I'll be back on Tuesday to hang out with you. And let me just check the calendar real quick. I think we are okay. That's not for another week. Okay, so yes, plan is to be back on Tuesday, and we'll hang out a little bit and have a fun little chat again. So hopefully you found today somewhat helpful, and that there are some nuggets of information that you're able to add to your arsenal and toolkit. Don't forget to hit me up over at birddogjohn.tv. Happy to have you subscribe to that. That shows my bosses, first of all, that this is actually a real thing, but also that there's useful information that people are interested in knowing, and they want to know more. And so feel free to join me over there, birddogjohn.tv. And of course, my guys at help@birddog.tv. That is my support system that my team works out of. If you need help with Bird Dog, okay, if you need help at all with your purchase, reach out to us at help@birddog.tv, and we can at least steer you in the right direction. If not, give you your answers that you're looking for. We do try and assist everybody as quickly as we can. Sometimes we have a little leeway in there. Give us a few hours to try and get things together, or if you send it to us at the end of the day, expect something first thing in the morning. But yes, please reach out to us at help@birddog.tv. That's where we can take your question and literally get to anybody in the company. If you send me a message on Facebook, I can't do that as well. If you call me on the phone, I just can't do that as well. I can't take the information you give me and get it over to the engineers so they can see it when they wake up. I have to put in a bunch of other processes to make that happen. So honestly, the help desk, help@birddog.tv, is highly efficient. We spend most of our time and energy making that system better and better and better, and we promise that's what we're trying to do. And so feel free to reach out to us there between now and Tuesday. And if you can wait till Tuesday, hit me up right here at birddogjohn.tv, and we'll hang out again on Tuesday at 11 o'clock Eastern Time, right here on the interwebs, for more hopefully useful information that you find fascinating. So you are very welcome, James. Thank you for the question. Always appreciate it. You're always coming here with great questions, and so please come back. I'd like to hang out with you again shortly. So we'll see you on Tuesday, guys. Take care of yourselves. Take care of each other, and we'll see you in the next one. Cheers.
Serenity!